Welcome to another edition of Fatherhood Voices. So I'm excited today because we have a special guest, and his name is Corey Jenks. Now, he has a very unique
Indeed. You nailed it. Somebody
vision
say
and
Corey
purpose that
Jenkins
he's
or
on
even
because
throw
he.
the E in Corey. So,
What's that? What was that?
oh, sorry, you'd frozen and I jumped right in.
Oh, that's okay. So we have a very special guest today, and that's Corey. And he's going to share his story about not only fatherhood, also pharmaceuticals, and what he's done to start now get kids to lean and wean their way off that type of. And with that, and then, when I was looking at your Instagram stuff, using comedy. So if I'm not mistaken, I
Mhm.
think, you do some, you're a comedian also. And
Yeah. So, yeah. Mhm.
so go and introduce yourself and, yeah.
Yeah. So, my name is Corey Jenks. I'm a pharmacist, author, comedian, professional speaker. I live in Tucson, Arizona. And I'm a father. Here we're talking about that. So, I have three kids, all 6 and under. So, drinking from the fire hose of life right now with all of them. Yeah, I'm a pharmacist that works primarily in the world of my practices in diabetes. So I do a lot of lifestyle management to try to get people off their medicines, but a lot of that inspires how we raise our kids. And then I'm also been doing improv comedy for over a decade. So being able to adjust on the fly with the kids is a useful skill. And then I've written a couple of books as well. So a lot of different things. I don't know if it's a jack of all trades, master of none, but that's how it feels sometimes.
So let me ask you a question. Since you've started on this trajectory of really taking fatherhood and kids and so forth and blending it into your profession, how was life for you growing up? How was life for you as a child? And did that set the foundation for this? Because it sounds like it's a passion of yours,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
definitely intertwining comedy into it also and laughter. What was life for Corey growing up?
It was good. I think that on the spectrum of childhoods, I really can't complain. I was born and raised here in Tucson, Arizona. Two awesome parents. They were both teachers. So the nice part about that was I always had summers with them, winter breaks with them, a lot of extra time with them. As a father, my dad, he taught, and then he also would teach swimming lessons. He would coach. So he was someone that was always busy and doing multiple jobs. And I think that something my grandfather also did. He worked two or three different jobs because he enjoyed tinkering and building, and so that really set me up for the reality that Jenks men don't sit still. So it wasn't enough to be a pharmacist. I also had to try comedy and writing books, and I enjoy that busyness of it. But it really, I think, provided a good example of working on multiple things that you care about.
Now, you know, life for you, it sounds like it was more traditional, like you had the family component, especially because your
Yes.
parents were teachers. Of course, their
Mhm.
profession was to instill learning and being present. 'Cause I, in my past, was a teacher also. I know I definitely didn't do it for the money. It was for the passion and for being able to give back. So that, did you realize, um, when did you realize how strong of a family component you had? Because a lot of children don't get that.
Yeah, I think it was something I realized not at a super young, but pretty early on in life. I played sports and was all around town in different parts of the city, interacting with many different kids and people. And it was fortunate again to have a community of friends and family that were supportive. And it really, at an early age, as teachers, they didn't make a lot of money. And so I would ask you the question, are we rich? And they'd say, we're rich in love. And you're a kid and you want a new baseball bat. You really don't care about love. You care about getting a new Easton. But, but it became apparent really very early that what they meant by that and how important that was. It was an early appreciation and something that when we decided to have kids, we wanted to make sure that we had a strong support system there for our kids as well, not just us, but also extended family unit friends, good influences on them. Because I saw friends who had poor influences. It's really the thing the apple doesn't fall far from the tree is unfortunately really true in some cases and can be really fortunate in other cases.
Did you have children first before you started your journey into your career in
N-
pharmaceuticals or
No, so my wife and I had been out of pharmacy school for 7 years before we had kids, and she had been out of. She's a nurse practitioner, so she'd been out of school. She'd been a nurse when we met, but she was out of grad school for 3 years before we had our first kids. So we chose the path of spending more time together before we took the plunge. Looking back, I think if we started having kids a little earlier, I think that would have been cool. But we waited a while to really set a strong foundation. But I also think with kids, you can wait way too long. You could wait till there's never a perfect time to have kids. So I think we probably could have gone a little sooner, but I wouldn't change where we're at with our life, our careers, and our kids.
and then I've read that one of the things you do is you use comedy to try to get to
Yes.
people. Now, where did that come from? How did that start? What was this epiphany that you just wanted to? Now, was there a message you were trying to get across, or it was just something you always wanted to do? And then from that, that's where it kind of revealed.
Well, one of the parts of my childhood that might not have been the best parenting move, but it was the parenting move that I had was there was a TV in my room from about the age 6 on. So I spent a lot of time watching TV like The Simpsons, Saturday Night Live. So grew up loving comedy, quoting it with my friends. And I got to college and there was an improv comedy group there. And I went, saw it, was blown away, but I was a dutiful pharmacy student, so I didn't actually participate in comedy. When I finished my pharmacy residency, I took improv classes and realized that it taught a lot of skills that can help in healthcare, listening, communication, teamwork. And as someone who's a provider and consumer of healthcare, the listening, communication, teamwork, empathy are things that are just really poorly done in healthcare. And I realized I probably wasn't, I'm not that funny, so I wasn't going to make it as a professional comedian, but I'm funny enough to use those skills to teach other healthcare professionals. That was the origin of my first book. And a lot of what I do with my traveling and speaking is working with healthcare organizations because the skills of improv comedy really translate well, not only to healthcare, I think life, being a parent, etc. But it's something that we think all could use a refresher on from time to time.
And how do you use comedy in your day-to-day interactions with your kids? Like, when do they know that dad's being having a funny moment, or when do they know when dad's being serious? How do you find that balance?
I think that the comedy itself just is lends itself to trying to make everything as much as you can make it a game to make it fun. Whether it's picking up their toys and saying, "I'll time you. Can you do it under a minute?" Or as my kids have gotten older, my oldest just turned 6, and he's starting to really develop a good sense of humor. So knowing that I can do a little like funny like side comment to him, and he gets they know that I'm joking. I think there is such a thing as dad voice, and when I'm using dad voice, they they know that that is not joke time. It's usually when they're doing something that's unsafe or have not listened after about 10 calm requests. So it's certainly a balance. I try not to waver too high in the laugh all the time mode because I don't think that's a realistic world we can live in where everything's a joke, but also you can't be serious all the time either. And so try not to. I think the thing with comedy is you can see the absurdity of why we get upset over this like cup of water that spilled over some papers that weren't even important. And you step back and realize that that was unnecessary. I did not need to get upset about that. So kind of laughing at yourself for the absurd things you do or say like with a baby, like you're routinely sniffing a human being's butt. Like when are you ever going to do that again? I hope never. When they're a baby, you're checking their ear because go to the bathroom. So to me, it's also looking at the comedy of what we do as we raise kids.
One of the things I look for when we're interviewing is I look for one or two things that we can turn into a summary sheet, like a best practice that we can offer tools and resources. And you said something
Mhm.
that really stood out because I think it's important for fathers. And you said, speaking my dad's voice. And even though it's such a simple comment, it's just like, oh, I speak my dad's voice. That's very profound because I think back to my childhood and my dad's
Mhm.
voice was, I'll use my mom first. When my mom called by my name, I knew that she was serious. And I
Mhm.
knew when my dad shifted a certain tone that I'd hit that level where it was no longer fun and games. It was discipline time.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, because that's powerful, how to articulate that to a child, because yeah, some
Mhm.
dads are going to be cool and fun, but then there's a time for play and there's a time to get down to business.
Mhm.
And how to capture that moment of having that conversation with a child of, hey, when I get to this point, this is going to be dad voice and this is what I mean. Like now,
Yeah.
oh, I've asked you a couple times to clean up the room, but now I'm stepping into my dad's voice. I just kind of want to expand on that because I think that right there is a tool that can help
Mhm.
not only fathers but also mothers is
Mhm.
to find that identify that point that children are going to know, like, okay, like it's serious. Because I hate that we have to get to yelling and screaming and
Mhm.
even punishment. I wish
Yeah.
there was a way to have this dad voice say, hey, son, daughter, when I get to this point and I exert this dad voice or give you this key phrase, just know that we're reaching a point where it's serious. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I think that what I struggle with my first kid, and unfortunately for him, the first kid you're kind of learning on more than the subsequent second and third, is going to that place of discipline too quickly and too often and beyond their level of development. And this is something that my wife had been around kids more than me, so she knew what appropriate expectations are. So I think this is an appropriate tool if you understand what those expectations of their level of development are. And something that I've been really working on is really I failed yesterday, so it's terrible or great timing, however you want to see it, but saving those for moments of safety, because you go on that hill too much, even the yelling gets drowned out. And it's now you're just yelling and they're going to yell back and it's going to escalate. But if it's a matter of you only go to this thing if it is a safety issue and then find other tools to use when it's just, I'm annoyed with you because you're not listening and sitting down and eating dinner issue. And then also taking a step back and realizing that there's only so much parent or dad capital we have with our kids, and we can't use it up on insignificant small things like a couple things left out versus cars coming and they're in the road. Because if you yell at them over a couple toys in the room, they're going to tune you out when there's a safety issue. So I think it's certainly a tool to think about, but making sure that they're at an age appropriate level to understand that, and then deploying those that the air quote dad voice only when it is like a safety issue. And that's one thing, unfortunately, I learned from my dad was a little a little short temper. So um, I, I picked that up from him, and I'm aside from everything, still great dad. None of us are perfect, but that's I think probably one of the number one things that I work on is staying calm, not reacting when it's not needed, and then speaking up for those moments that are really important.
the word did, so I know you've written a book and then you dealt more with the pharmaceuticals, but then now you shift toward father.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to find out where that came from. That epiphany that you had that, of course, having children and maybe seeing, being in the industry. What was that moment that you're like, I need to do
Well, think the book came about because I a couple of years ago cut my hours in half. So I'm now a part time pharmacist and a part time stay at home dad a couple of days a week, and so I was at the park with my kids and just observing the other dads around, sort of checked out on their phones while their kids are playing, like trying to get their attention. And as a comedian, I'm just looking at this absurd situation where all these kids want is their dad's attention. The dads aren't giving it to them. And I thought, there was like a joke in there because I went into my phone to talk about not going on your phone. And so I actually read in the book, like, if you're reading this, know that I actually got my phone out while I did this. And if you don't heed this, my kids will have been ignored for no reason. So I ignored my kids to get that idea down. But that sort of opened my eyes to all these other little fatherhood observations. And then also those moments were like, I wish I'd have known that, or I wish I'd have known that. And so I just started putting notes into my phone, trying to connect jokes to them, and then I ended up putting it into a book form in a way that I think is accessible to dads. Men like comedy, where we don't, most of us, I'm not going to stereotype, don't want to read some heavy prose saying how bad we are and what we do. But if you read a book by a guy who's still figuring it out, who exposes his own vulnerabilities and mistakes and provides simple, pragmatic solutions in a comedy coded shell, you're more likely to read it and then be better dads, and then society improves. So, no pressure on me, but or dads. But if we don't do our jobs, society really doesn't run well. So this is my little thought of a contribution to improve humanity.
And put the book up again. What's the name of the book?
Sure. Yeah, right here.
Oh,
Whoop.
okay, there we go. I guess
Yeah.
I'm a dad now. Okay, and it's using
Humorous
copies.
handbook for newish dads who don't want to.
Okay, when does it come out?
It comes out on Mother's Day because the best gift you can give mom is to be a better dad. So May 12th, 2024, as you listen to this, if it has passed, the book has come out. So, but yeah, May 12th, 24 is the next, my next book coming out.
So if I'm a father,
Mhm.
I'm not present. Okay,
Mhm.
and people are telling me this. Get to this. What is it going to do? How is it going to break that barrier? I know you're seeing comedy. Tell me what So why do I pick this book? People are already telling me I'm not present. I'm going to do it. I'm going to work better.
Yeah. Well, because I think that, yeah, I provide a pretty low bar for being present in the book. And I say it doesn't take much. Like literally just being present. You don't have to be present and buy them a bunch of stuff. You don't have to, and you go on Instagram, you see the super dads building like the Ninja Warrior courses for their kids. You don't have to do that. Um, it's amazing. Kids can be very forgiving. And every time that I raise my voice and I shouldn't have, I apologize. My kids are like, it's fine. They keep moving on. Like if you can just put your phone down. Like my son was telling me about his friend. His friend was saying, my mom's on her phone all the time. Well, that's kind of sad. I asked him, are mommy and daddy on the phone? And he said, no. And I'm like, "Phew, okay, I could probably be better about this too. The bar is low. I think if you're a dad and you've been told you're not present, pick up my book, read some of the information, laugh at me, laugh at yourself, realize like it's never too late to turn this around. And the bar for being it's just a suck less. Like that's why the secondary title is just how it can be less sucky as dads. Pardon my French here, but it doesn't take much. You don't need perfection. No parent is perfect. And I think sometimes if you're struggling as a parent and you look at someone that's perceived as the perfect dad or the perfect mom, and you're so far from achieving that, you're like, it's learned helplessness. You just give up and don't even try. Well, just a little bit every day, and you're going to be a better parent. I mean, I wrote this book kind of for myself to go back to too, for those reminders too.
Give me an excerpt from the book. Give me something that uh, story or something that kind of hones in on a dad moment, a dad,
Yeah.
a universal dad moment that we all experience. And that could be being present, or that could be here's one. How dads, society kind of creates this norm that we can't cry, we can't show emotion.
Hmm. Well,
Because I
I'll
was
say this that,
years and years.
yeah, well, I have a whole chapter called Dude Self Care. And to paraphrase the chapter, when I hear self care, I kind of think of the female version of being at a spa, putting the cucumbers over your eyes, getting a nice little massage, something that's probably not something that a lot of guys are thinking that they would want to do, but it's simply as simple. I talk about finding other dads that you can just kind of vent to. And it's interesting. I reference my neighbors in the book. We have a neighborhood here where the moms are all the cougars because they're all older than the dads. We call ourselves the Manthers. We're the dudes. And we'll get together. We'll go for a walk or a ruck around the neighborhood or a run. Last night I played bocce with one of my neighbors and a bunch of like the old guys in the neighborhood. And on the walk there, on the walk back, we're just talking about the struggles we've had with our kids. And it doesn't undo the struggles. It just helps to bounce those ideas off, verbalize those feelings, acknowledge our shortcomings, and know we're not alone in having those struggles. For some, self care can mean a golf trip with their friends. It could be going hunting. It could just be an afternoon to go work out. Whatever that is, we need to recharge our own batteries. And I think men are given this idea that you got to be this like stoic, unfeeling machine that doesn't stop. And let me tell you, when you don't, the pressure builds up and you explode, unfortunately, on the people you are most comfortable with, as your kids will do to you, and it's your family. So take care of yourselves. And that's the entire section is devoted to that.
Oh, I love that. I just did a video a couple weeks ago, and I talked about how as entrepreneurs, you know, we have these coaching groups and we have these accountability groups, and
Mhm.
we hold each other accountable to going to the gym and how many calls did we make and how many contacts and prospects, how many appointments. And I was just talking about, we invest so much time, effort, and energy into our businesses, but we don't do it for our children.
Mhm.
Why don't we have accountability group for fathers? Why can't
Yeah.
father? And this is what you're saying here. Is that what you guys are doing? You guys have an accountability group, but why isn't there more of it? That we can hold each other accountable, and instead of, yeah, okay, business may be important, but it's not as important as raising our children, because
Mhm.
how we show up for them is going to dictate how they show up for their kids in the future.
Mhm.
And it's just sad that we live in this society where it teaches us that men can't be vulnerable. That the
Yeah.
women can go off to, you go to a gathering, and the women go off to the corner and they have, chit chat talk, and they talk about their issues and their marriages and their issues with kids. But as men, we get stuck with sports. We want to talk about sports, or we want to
Mhm.
boost both women, or hiking or fishing, whatever, you
Yeah.
know, that group is into. But it's never about the kids. Never about, hey, how are you doing? How are you doing, Johnny? Like, you know, I noticed that he's
Mhm.
very mean to you. Like, what's your relationship? And that's what I want to see more of. So I'm glad that you're exposing that in there, that you're sharing, because
Mm.
we as men need accountability. We as fathers need to be able to work with each other to learn best practice.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the comments that I've gotten from people I've given advanced copies to, is, "Oh, I thought I was the only one." There's this certain you're kind of on this island as a dad, and you think you're failing on this island. You're on failure island, and then you talk to another dad, and you get onto the ship and get to the other island and realize, oh, we're having the same problems over on my island, and it's refreshing. It's not, it doesn't undo the challenges, but I think that it helps you not feel alone. And I think that's where a lot of the struggles can be. Is you sit in your head, you feel like you're failing, you feel all alone in your struggles. And so when I have a neighbor I go for a run with every week, and it always ends with a walk, and we talk about, someone's having trouble with potty training, someone's having a tantrum. I can't believe I did this. And in addition to getting the exercise, we just kind of get that mental baggage out of our brain, get ready to roll on Monday. So it doesn't have to, when, I think because dudes really push back against this idea of like mental health and therapist, or it can be very, those are like just like put up walls. But if you say, hey man, let's go shoot bocce and talk. All right, right. Let's roll some balls around, hang out. And in the course of that, you get to those conversations. And I think when it feels more organic and less forced, a guy's more likely to do it. And that's, again, the reason the tone of strike with this book is very laid back, very humorous, but with an earnest message that kind of ties it all together at the end.
And what are some of the other things that you dabble into in the books? Self-care for
Yeah.
men, which is very
Mhm.
unheard of. I wish more men would do
Yeah.
that. I love going to get pedicures and meditation and so
Mhm.
forth, to do things for me to make myself feel good, to de-stress from the kids,
Yeah. Well, you're going to find in this book a lot of tactical information you can take out with you. And this is geared towards guys who are thinking about kids up to about age 5, which is when I finished the draft of the book. My kid had just turned 5. So if you have a 7 or 8 year old, you're going to probably say a lot of this is, there's probably some universal information, but I talk about the first year when you have this new baby and you have this idea of what it's going to be like. And you realize it's kind of a mom show. The mom pops the baby out and attached to this mom for 9 months. Doctor gives it to you to hold for a second. Baby immediately for me was like, I need mom. I'm hungry. So it was boom, right on there for a year. So what do you do with yourself? How to support your wife? When you travel with kids, how to deal with that? You're going to be pressured to buy all these things for your kids, all these toys. What do they really like? How do you navigate youth sports? How do you navigate new play dates? So some sort of humorous examples and ideas of how you can navigate the interpersonal relationships of kids, and then a lot of little quick hits of help, and then ultimately some tips on preserving those memories with your kids in a way that's going to be accessible, heartfelt, and helpful.
And being in the pharmaceutical industry,
Hmm.
uh, take on that. especially with, I honestly feel, and I'm not a doctor, anything, but
Hmm.
I just feel that doctors to want to prescribe Ritalin or Adderall or something to kids that are
Hmm.
just, think of myself. I was designated as ADHD, and
Hmm.
I just had so much energy, and I was just curious. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that my mom uh, didn't follow that advice and just allowed me to be me. Now, yeah, it was I probably called them bonkers, but I was just always
Yeah.
questioning things and why and jumping around. And I look back and I hate to put a label on it, but it seems like
Hmm.
there's so want to put a label on things, and I'm sure even from the pharmaceutical industry, prescribing this stuff out. What are your thoughts on that? If you're open to even sharing, and let me
Sure.
know.
I think that one of the themes I have in my book is not putting a ton of energy into things, just in general. I think whether a kid does something good or bad, um, my wife and I are very like we're in little league right now, and we love our two boys are playing. Do something good, we'll clap our hands, say good job, and that's about it. We have these parents that are just it's little league, it's baseball, it's a big deal. And I'm like they're six, chill out, because nothing will ruin a sport more than putting a lot of energy into things. I think making this rule, I promise I'm getting there, is that when we put a big label or a big energy into something, it makes it like a much bigger thing than it needs to be for the kid. One of the big tenets that I do talk about in the book is hills to die on as a parent. Like there's only so much, again, parent capital you can put into your kids, the family, the friends of what you care most about. Two of our big pillars were screens and nutrition. So limiting screen time to help them avoiding whatever's out on the internet, and hopefully helping with keeping their attention, and then appropriately feeding them and not providing a lot of basically avoiding junk food, which is abnormal or it's very normal to just be like, they're one, give them a piece of cake for their birthday. Like our kids didn't get sugar until they were like two. And even then it was very limited. And then even three. And as they've gotten older, like the goal was to lay a strong foundation in nutrition. And there's a lot of really compelling evidence on the connection between nutrition and behavior. And so we've seen this with some of our family members who changed their nutrition with their kids and seen changes in behavior. And so making this all relate to the prescribing of medicines, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a pediatrician. I am a pharmacist who's had over a decade of observing a lot of these trends, who's observed a lot of kids and seeing what's in lunches when I go chaperone my kids' field trips. And I just think there's a lot of work to be done in how we fuel our kids' brains. And I think that to me is a low risk, high possible reward intervention for a lot of behavior. And listen, I'm going to say this as an adult. When I don't eat well, my behavior is worse too. So I'm not just throwing cats and stones at these poor kids and the parents. And I also think we've been educated poorly, and there's a lot of deeper factors on that influence what we buy and the food we eat, etc. But yeah, when a kid's when it's an appropriate choice and a conversation and a risk benefit conversation for a medication, that's the appropriate way to do it. When it's a shotgun approach, I think that is a much more dangerous path to go.
You said something that really resonated with me. You parent and
Yes.
you use that as foundation. I need you to expand a little bit more on that because that right there is powerful. Because to me, when you said parent capital, my mind went to I'm setting the foundation for my children. These are
Hmm.
the steps, the activities, the things I'm putting in place, health, exercise, etc.
Hmm.
But that right there was powerful because the way that you just parent capital.
Yeah.
I need you to go a little bit deeper into that because that right there is a nugget right there. That right there is a
Yeah.
powerful.
When I say parent capital, I'm gonna refer to like I talked earlier about like with your kids and discipline. This is taking a step back. So when I think of a new parent, you hopefully, a new parent, you care so much about your kid. You want everything to be perfect, right? You want them to have the right food, the right clothes, the right diapers, the right toys, the right everything. And I've seen it happen where the parents are like, you want to control as much as you can, like the sleep schedule, food, etc. And we have had people in our circle where they go crazy on everything, and they burn out, and they burn out everyone around them. the family that's going to watch the kids. They're like, they need to eat this. They can't watch that. They have to do this, and this. And it's just too restrictive. And there's only so much that you yourself have the energy to do, or others around who are caring for your kid have the energy to do. So that's what I mean by parent capital. So much of that. And so the section in the book I have is like the hills to die on. So two, maybe three major hills to die on that hopefully will, as you say, set the foundation for all of these other things. Now, you as a parent got to pick it out on your own. Uh, I, Everyone has their own values and things they find the most important. For some, it's like a sleep schedule. They're going to put everything into their sleep schedule. And then maybe one or two other things. For us, my wife, again, my wife is a nurse practitioner that manages diabetes and obesity. I work in the same world. And for us, laying the foundation of nutrition was number one. And then number two, limiting their screen time as much as possible. And the third kind of minor hill is, like, for us, the relationships in our family and friends that they're exposed to. So this means that when they go to grandma and grandpa's house, the only things we care about are feed them this, don't feed them that, and don't give them like more than X minutes of TV shows. Oh, and this irritated the grandmas because they're just like, I want to make them cookies. I'm like, they're one. They do not need cookies when they're one because they're going to be feeding for sweet and not eating anything else. And they were just like so upset. But here they are at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and they can have a cookie and stop versus having this like fiending for it. So that's what I mean by parent capital. You're going to drive everyone and yourself crazy if you are trying to put energy into every little minute detail, and you just can't do that. There's a level of control you give up when you have kids, but if you care deeply about 2 or 3 things, go deep into those. And if hopefully the ones you choose have the outcomes that you want and will help guide that child and develop that foundation.
So writing this book, especially geared towards children at an early age, I'm sure there was a lot of research, and then you had to go back and think about your interaction with your children and your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Out of this book, did you have any aha moments where you back and I should have done this differently?
Oh yeah, I cared. My first kid, we loved, support, cared for, but with the first, we didn't give him any chance to play by himself. It was just the two of us and him, and he's just used to having us around all the time. And so now that he's gotten older, he's a little bit more challenging to get to play independently versus the poor second kid who's now the middle kid. That kid, like a year ago, he just came out of his bedroom, went and played trains for like an hour. And we're like, what is going on? We're not used to this. And so I think that aha moment for us was, oh, like we can love our kids and be present with them, but it is okay to back off and give them space alone to learn how to play by themselves too. Because it has made life easier with kid 2 and more of a challenge as we've tried to let kid 1 do his thing. And now the 2 brothers are old enough that they'll entertain each other and play too. But that's the nice thing about writing this book is it's all these insights that I'm learning on as I go. And that was certainly one that has helped chill me out. And then I think the other one I mentioned earlier was just using age appropriate expectations, which just comes with experience.
That's funny because I'm on this journey of grandfatherhood.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter just had a baby last year, and so they can't call me grandpa. They have to call me Larry, like Larry the Lobster from SpongeBob. I'm still working with being a grandpa.
Yeah.
And but to me, it's like a do. I'm going to look forward to reading your book because to me, it's a do-over because I wasn't present. Been very transparent about my narcissistic behavior and how I was so hard on my girls. All 3 of them, by the time they were 16, contemplated suicide.
Oh wow.
And I gave them PTSD. Because
Yeah.
I was hard on them, not so much physical as much as success. Have to go to college, not depend on a man. And then I was, because coming from a sales mentality of always being an entrepreneur and that grind, so I instilled that on them. And, now as you reflect back on, you say playing alone, I'm going to take that. I'm glad that you shared that because even when I spend time with my granddaughter, I'm so quick to want to hold her or pick her up and sometimes I see in her playpen and she's playing with her little people and I need to just back off and give her space because what you said really stood out because I don't want her to have issues later on where she doesn't know how to sit with herself. And I
Yeah.
think we're all so excited because we have this bundle of love that kind of started to heal our family,
Yeah.
and also quick to just want to show her attention.
Yeah.
But when she's playing by herself, let her play by herself. You know?
That's one of the biggest things that I've kind of gotten in trouble with my extended family with is like when our kids are happily playing and they're like playing with trains and my family will be like, hey, look at this truck. I'm like, hey, he's happy. He's playing. Let him go. And I think that's it's hard because and this is again like with your experience you gave with your daughters, I'm sure was out of love and wanting to have the best, which is much better than the neglectful PTSD that like the opposite end of that spectrum, right? It's out of love and it's the good intentions, right? This is I read about this like the path the hell is paved with good intentions. We're trying so hard, and I think sometimes like we can try a little less hard. And if you allow me to give you an example of just a couple days ago of that backing off situation. So our sons are both playing little league. Our kids on the field playing the pitcher's mound. The guy hits the ball back, ground ball, pops him in the nose, picks up the ball, throws it to first, and all the other coaches like swarm him like, "Are you okay?" And I'm on the outfield, and I just let it be. I don't even go put energy into it. And he's like, I'm fine. I want to play, but his nose is like gushing blood. So I went and I cleaned up the blood and the kid didn't cry. Like another mom's like, hey, do you want ice? I'm like, no, no, no. Don't let him know that it's supposed to hurt or be bad. And all I wanted was to get back on the field. It was literally like the proudest dad moment I've ever had. He was so tough. He was so calm, which is the opposite of what I would be and what I wanted to be. But my wife and I were just like, let's clean up the blood. And as soon as the blood was cleaned up, he runs on the field. The next pitch, ball hit right back from him. He picks it up and like makes the play. And one better than I was as a baseball player already, which is incredible. You know, zero expectations of ability based on the DNA, but it's that lack of energy and of making it like if you don't tell them they're supposed to be afraid or scared, they won't be. And I think that's one of the big things we're trying to pass on to our kids is that calm, like you say, sit with yourself, don't freak out, work through this, and so that they'll be able to do it on their own in the future.
It's funny because I have a real life experience where when I was 7,
Yeah.
my mom's little league when we got the uniforms, we got the cleats. I kid you not, first day out there, I'm out there on the field. Hadn't really, dad wasn't around to teach me how to play ball.
Mhm.
Well, someone hits the ball, probably like 10, 15 minutes into practice. Goes flying. I go to get it. I miss it, hit my ball, start crying. Mom
Mhm.
goes into that state of, security and protection.
Yeah.
I never stepped back on the league field. And that's one of the biggest regrets I have is that
Yeah.
she sheltered me.
Mhm.
She almost like she instilled fear. And I
Yeah.
never would. And that's the
Yeah.
one
And
regret
that's
because now by not going back because of that experience, my kids were not exposed to. All three of my girls never played any sport
yeah.
because, and I'm having this realization moment now as you're talking, and I'm connecting the dots that based on an experience I had as a child, where it could have been handled totally differently,
Mhm.
not only did I miss out on that camaraderie, that teamship, but
Mhm.
also all three of my girls, it was never a priority because of this uh, broken little boy inside that always
Yeah.
had this fear of what and maybe it's more
Mhm.
embarrassment. Maybe it wasn't so much pain now it's embarrassment of what are the other kids going to
Yeah.
think because I'm not good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And
that
that's
was a
one of the
powerful one.
chapters is called Your Kid Will Fall Down. And the whole idea is like, of course, like if your kid's seriously injured, take care of them. But my wife was an ICU nurse for years. So her threshold for danger is like, are they upright and breathing? Okay, they're good. Like they're not on a ventilator. They're not on a pressure to raise their blood pressure. Like, so she's got a much more like, and her dad was a fighter pilot and a farmer. So he's much more, he knows when there's serious stuff going on. And so he's got that good, calm sense of like not overreacting. And I'll just say my parents, very loving, very opposite of like it would heighten a thing like that. And my father will be like, "Oh, there's blood, cool." And so that's what we try to do with our kids is like if they fall down, the first reaction is like, "You look okay, let's go, keep going, just get back at it." So you don't have time to think and let that stuff sink into your brain. So because like when you think about it, that's what probably what happened. Like might have what happened with you. Like you internalize it, you think about it versus like, "Oh, that hurt. Okay, back to it." And so who knows? Like we're so early in our parenting journey. Maybe in 10 years or years, they'll say how mean we were to them. I don't know. But the goal is to go with that. Like that's our ideal path. And that's how we typically approach an injury or something like that.
So I want to bring up 2 points. The first one is um, funny because as we're doing this do-over of parenting, and you, their aunts, the kids get loud in front of my granddaughter. Hey, hey, not in front of Bella. You got to lower your voice. Oh, no, no. Don't play that. It's too loud. So like we're so quick to want to shelter them, because
Hmm.
it's a do-over. Right? And I'm trying to find that balance of not going to the extreme. But then
Yeah.
I also think about my daughter, her mom, uh, how, my daughter's only 20 years old. So she has a baby now. And you can't touch the baby until you put sanitizer on your hands.
Hmm.
Oh, that napkin just touched the table. You got to clean it.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to find the balance here. And
Hmm.
maybe you can help me with this because she'll listen to this podcast. But I
Hmm.
wonder if there's sometimes too much of extreme where you're sheltering the baby so much from bacteria or just from
Hmm.
germs that it can do the opposite. Because I feel like the way my daughter is trying to protect, my granddaughter from germs, I feel like it's a little
Yeah.
you know. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to find.
Well, again, this is better than the neglect, right? It's the challenge of the good intentions. And so the way we approach it is with a newborn, that first 3 to 4 months, they are hyper vulnerable. So we did not mess around. And our second kid was born June of 2020, so peak COVID. So like we were much more careful with him. And it's basic precautions. Wash your hands. If you're sick, stay away. For the smokers in our family, we made them change their shirts so that there was no secondhand smoke when they held the baby. Like this was something we did. And then as they get older, as they get more robust, like for us, they went to daycare, so they're going to get exposed to stuff anyway. So that they're going to get sick. The average number of colds the kids gets a year is like 9 or 10. It's a lot, and so that's I think inevitable. And I just try to reframe it as they're building their immune system. They're going to be stronger later on. And as my generation, the millennials, we were raised in the hyper sanitized world, and now we have all this autoimmune problem. Now I can't totally connect them one to one. That would be unscientific and irresponsible. All this to say is that when our kids drop food on the floor, now that they eat it, they play in the dirt, they walk around barefoot. Um, but we also make them wash their hands before they eat dinner. So we're not totally gross and unsanitary in a way like that. There again, this is the level of control you lose as a parent. There's so much beyond your control. So we're not. If someone's like really sick, we don't go to their house. Mostly because if one kid gets sick, the three go down, and then we lose daycare, and it's like a 2 week process for us. So when someone's actually sick, we don't mess with them. For the napkin on the floor, for a newborn, yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. As they continue to get older, they're we got to build an immune system. It doesn't mean that to cover them with like if someone's got the flu, just don't expose them to the flu. Like that's a bad idea too. But having sort of a reasonable level of expectations, and goes back to that parent capital. You can drive yourself crazy trying to make everything sanitary 100% all the time. Our kids eat stuff off the ground, they get out the dirt. Knock on wood, they're ticking okay. They get sick sometimes, then they get better. So does everybody. Um, but yeah, I will respect that very first few months. That's a vulnerable, scary time because if they're sick at all, they get a fever, they're going to the hospital. Versus, at 1 year plus, you're at outpatient level. We can handle this a little more easy.
I think back to this funny moment where it just happened a week ago. Granddaughter's sitting there waiting to eat, and she's playing with little people, and the little people falls on the floor, and it hits the floor, and I go to grab it, and I miss it, and I pick it up, and I go to give it back to her, and my daughter's, oh, oh, you got her. Gosh. And it's literally, I just played out slow motion. He's like literally about to tackle me because I'm taking these plastic little people and I'm going to put it back on the tray and look, tackles me. It was just a funny moment that I just thought of as you were sharing about
Sure.
germs.
Yeah. No judgment in our house. In our house, that goes right back to the kid. She's almost a year old, so we're more comfortable with that. Not judging anyone who feels opposite, and especially with the first. it's not, it's kind of a cliche that is with each kid, you get a little more lax. It's legit, at least for us.
So as we start to near the end of this podcast, reflecting now on your first couple of years and your children. Now you've written the book, and I know I've been working on something for a while, and it's a lot of research, it's a lot of
Hmm.
soul searching. It's
Hmm.
my journey with writing a book has been very emotional.
Hmm.
Um, but it's because how I showed up. So it's going to take me
Yeah.
a lot longer because there's some things I still don't want to face. I'm still
Hmm.
working through.
Hmm.
So I get the journey that you're on, especially and bravo and congratulations for not only completing the first one, completing this one because I truly understand the emotions uh, that goes into it.
Hmm.
And you think back to now completion of this book and it's coming out on Mother's Day. God, I'm just like summarizing that journey of having to search within yourself, doing the research, and then second guessing yourself, you know,
Hmm.
because I'm sure there was a lot of second guessing, to try to, you know, put words on paper the right way so it flows and so it makes
Hmm.
summarize that journey for
Honestly, I just want to nap right now. I'm tired. It's a, like, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like with the season of life for the three young kids, it was, I do most of my writing when like the book writing I'll write when I travel. I have a couple other ones I'm working on right now. So when I travel and speak, I do a lot of writing on the plane. And with the first book and this one, people are like, how are you going to celebrate? And I'm like, I don't really have time to sit and reflect and celebrate. I got to get about 4 in the morning to give myself like an hour and a half of peace and quiet to work out and write and do that kind of thing. But looking back on it, it is a lot of people talk about writing a book and they don't do it. And now I've written two, and I have two more written that are in the editing process, or one's editing and one's partially written. And I'm I'm real happy with myself for following through. And a reason that I do this, write these books, is because a lot when I was growing up, I had a grandfather who told me you can do whatever you want, be whatever you want. And he had worked his entire career as a lawyer and hated it. He wanted to coach baseball and he didn't. But the lifestyle required from grandma was not a baseball coach's salary. So unless you're a professional manager, and he would not be that. And so I remember him telling me that. And even if you want to be a mailman, I don't know what he had against the postal service, but that's what he always went to. It was like, even if you're a mailman, just be happy. I was 10 years into my pharmacy career and doing this comedy thing, writing, speaking, thinking about the paths to go. And the one path is keep going in pharmacy. It's a, it's a, it's a well compensated profession. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. But I could do that, continue, come home, be unhappy, be miserable, and tell my kids, like, no, you know what, like, I'm going to set you up so you can actually do what you want to do. And the reality is, I wrote this thing for me in a way to help other dads, help myself, but also show my kids, not just tell them that if you have a dream you want to pursue, do it. And now I might sell 4 copies of this one. I haven't sold a ton of loss in my last one, and that's fine. But I at least can tell my kids without being a hypocrite, you follow what you want to do because that's what dad did. And reflecting on that, the late nights, the second guessing of writing this, should I put this in there? My hope is that it'll be worth it. That someday, I don't think they don't need to look back at this movie like, Dad was really funny, really good writer, and he wrote about us. It was, all right, if Dad can do what he wants to do, even if the comfortable path would have been to continue what he was doing, we can do that too. And that's, we talk, there's a lot of legacy talk, and I don't expect to be on a statue or carved into a mountain. But if I could leave the legacy of showing my kids instead of just telling my kids and being a hypocrite, then this is all worth it and it's a win.
wow. As you're speaking and just certain things that you've said throughout the podcast, you remind me of somebody that I followed and I admired, and his name was Randy Park.
Okay.
I'm sure if you've ever heard of him.
Not
He was an educator, he was a professor, and he did the last talk, so he developed a form of cancer that he was dying,
Mhm.
and he did a famous talk. I want to say it was at Mellon, Carnegie University. It might have been at Harvard,
Oh,
but
this is ringing a bell. Yeah.
the last lecture.
Mhm.
And referenced about following rule things, about um, you know, not, you know, not letting go, doing things, being adventurous, living in the moment, being a and but this last lecture you did, which has been seen by millions and millions of people, at the end of
Mhm.
it, he says, and he wrote this to kids, and he wrote this to remind his kids that go out, be fun, be a Tigger, live in the moment, have fun, don't take life seriously. And as you're speaking, it brought a lot of emotions and memories of that talk. And then
Mhm.
you might have crossed your path, but I truly encourage you to go back and watch the last lecture. It's powerful
Mhm.
because of a lot of the underlines, a lot of tones of what you're sharing. It literally came to mind.
Yeah. Cool.
And so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And much success on your new book. And I'm definitely going to pick up a copy. And like I said, because I'm now exploring fatherhood again, but as a grandfather,
Yeah.
and going to look at best practices. I love the fact that comedy so it can be very dry from a normal business book. So I'll be able
Ah,
to,
cool.
laugh at the same time.
That's the hope, is that you will find the goal is it's I say it's a comedy book. It's really up to the reader to laugh or not. So you and all the readers can be the judge of that. But yeah, it's definitely not meant to be dry. It's meant to be, ear dog-eared, marked, bookmarked, highlighted, and go back and use those lessons in the moment.
And the beautiful thing is, um, this is just your story. And
Mhm.
what happens is a lot of times when we um, start to we pick up a book and we read, it may not be our way of thinking, it may not be our style, but sometimes we need to hear it differently than the
Mhm.
norm. We need to
Yeah.
step outside of our community, outside of our tribe, because
Mhm.
we only know a certain way. I know a certain way of how my parents raised me based on a lot of it based on cultural, you
Mhm.
know, and there's certain things that are done. So to be able to step out and look at different ways, you were exposed to a different way of living, and because of
Mhm.
your father, and then the discipline, and then as you guys went into your professional fields, you and your wife, and a whole different spin, a whole different content. Nice to look at a whole different way of thought process, because
Mhm.
sometimes that's what we need as especially new fathers, is not just hearing from our mother, our aunts.
No one wants to hear from their own family. So that's yeah, very few family members of mine will probably read it. So all the non-family members will get a lot of it because no one wants to hear from their own family, and that's just I think human nature. So yeah, I hope this book helps a lot of dads. And as you're listening to this, if you read it and you want to tell me what you think, good or bad, if you go to CoreyJenks.com, you can find me from there. You can get all my socials. You can order the book from there. There's some really nice pre-order bonuses. And if you're listening to this, there's some different tiers. If you of bonuses, 1 book, 5 book, 10 books, etc. If you buy one and you say you heard me on the Fatherhood Voices podcast, I'm going to send you the bonus for all five, as if you had bought 5. So I want to help out the listeners. Being a dad's hard. Let's make it a little bit easier. So, and I'm going to, even if you listen to this after the book comes out, just tell me. I'll send it to you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for coming on and sharing your life and also just your journey into new fatherhood. And with
Thank you.
that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another wrap. Fatherhood Voices. I think we almost have to change the name because we have just as many mothers fallenness and now even kids fallenness fathers. Another beautiful journey where we've had Corey Jenks on the line, and from pharmacist to part-time father, full-time pharmacist to part-time. He's a comedian, he's an author, and most importantly, he's a father. And being able to be vulnerable and share his experiences with us, best practices. So definitely pick up the book. We'll put it in the caption bio, whatever the team does. We'll put it in there,
Mm.
and definitely let's support our guests and support other men, fathers that are trying to make an impact in the world for our children. And with that, have an amazing. Thank you so much, Corey.